a legend in aviation, none other than Patty Wagstaff on this episode of Taking Off. Hey everyone, Dan Milliken here. We're continuing our series on the week we had at AirVenture and going into depth on some interviews. This is brought to you by Gold Seal, groundschool.com, and Wingfield Aviation, your go-to aircraft maintenance facility. So it was an honor and a privilege to be able to talk with legendary pilot Patty Wagstaff. Patty, we got a Ford tri-motor going on out there, so we're going to have a little bit of noise. But for those,
sounds beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. For those who don't know who Patty Wagstaff is, who is Patty?
I tell people I'm just another sweaty air show pilot. You know.
Well, how did you get into aviation?
You know, I was brought up around it, like a lot of people in air shows, and a lot of people at Oshkosh. Actually, I was around aviation since I was since I was born. And my dad flew in the Air Force, and he went with the airlines, and I used to be able to fly with him in the cockpit. Unfortunately, they can't do that anymore, but yeah, so I've been around it my whole life. My dad, my sister's a pilot, and so it's in the family.
Okay, top of mind, quick questions. Favorite airplane you've flown?
You know, I keep going back to the extra because there's nothing like it. There's nothing they can do what the extra can do, or some of the other aerobatic planes, but I've flown a lot of different airplanes, and there's still some that I want to fly, but this one I keep going back to.
Favorite airplane you want to fly that you never have?
I would love to fly a Bearcat.
A Bearcat?
A Bearcat. I've never had the opportunity, but I hear it has beautiful, beautiful handling characteristics, and it's kind of a bigger version of an extra, to a limit. You know, can't do everything, but.
Scariest moment in a plane? My
scariest moments always have to do with weather, and you know, looking at, you know, finding an airport to land at. And I'm always flying from airport to airport when I'm flying cross country. I'm always VFR in these little airplanes. So those are my scary moments. And
do you have one specific?
Oh, I've got a few specific. When I first started flying pizzas around the country, I didn't have GPS or Loran, I didn't have a compass, didn't even have a radio, and I'd follow road maps. And you know, I remember taking the wrong turn on a railroad line and coming up and finding a town that wasn't the town on the sectional, and then turning back around, running out of gas. I had like an hour and a half of gas, and finally finding some little airport in the Midwest, and there was, you know, horrible weather and so on and so forth. But yeah, that was, I still remember that one.
What do you like best about flying in air shows?
It's a funny thing, flying air shows. You know, you're out in front of thousands of people sometimes, but you're up in your little bubble, and so you really can't hear people. You're sort of alone, but you're still performing. It's this kind of strange dichotomy, and to me, it's the payoff of all the work we do to get here. You know, there's a lot of practice, a lot of expense. There's a lot of paperwork, and then you get your 10-15 minutes in the box. And they call you on the radio and say, the box is yours, and then you can just go out and do whatever you want, and for 15 minutes, and it's all yours. It's pretty cool.
Let's talk about your career. You know, how you got into aviation, and then kind of where you went with that.
I was pretty lucky. It seems like it kind of chose me to be in aviation. I did other things first, and you know, I've always been pretty adventurous. I took a boat up with my first husband. I took a boat up the west coast of Australia.
Oh wow!
A small boat and a single-engine boat, and did some pretty cool traveling, and you know, so on and so forth. And I moved to Alaska and started flying small airplanes up there. So.
And then the very first, was it first solo?
The first flight in a small plane was chartering a plane for my job. I was working out of a town called Dillingham, and I had to go out to some villages in the region. I said, how do I get there? And they said, charter a plane from one of the charter outfits. I'm like, oh, I'd never even heard of such a thing as air taxis, you know. So chartered a plane, and on our first, we landed, picked up another pilot, another passenger, and we had a load of mail in the plane. There was myself and this other passenger and the pilot, and we were taking off from this dirt strip. It was soggy from spring breakup, and the snow was melting, and he didn't use the full length of the runway, and we saw it coming, and we crashed. Of course, he never got off the ground, and we crashed at the end of the runway and ended up upside down. And
oh, wow.
yeah, we got out, and everybody was okay. And I looked at the guy that was in there with me, and both our knees were shaking uncontrollably. We had no control over it. It was interesting, yeah. First time I've ever seen that kind
So
of...
because of that, you said, I gotta do this all
so
the time.
anyway, before I go off on a tangent on brain surgery or something, but yeah, that was when I said, this guy's an idiot. I can do better. Probably not very kind to me, but true. So yeah, so I dug a plane out of the snow. There was still snow in the airport, and found a flight instructor and begged him to teach me. He owned an air taxi, and he just had an instructor rating. He didn't do any instruction, and begged him to teach me, and he agreed.
And the rest is history.
We started, yeah.
Well, you've done some other interesting things other than just the aerobatics that you're famous for. You've done aerial firefighting. What's that like?
Yeah, I flew for CAL FIRE for 3 years, and just a few years ago, and I loved it. The mission is the mission of and the teamwork were what I really loved about it. Plus, flying the OB-10 was pretty cool too. I was flying air attack. We'd get out to the fire and assess what resources we need. Then we'd call in tankers and helicopters to fight the fire and coordinate with firefighters on the ground. And
so you weren't just flying over dumping stuff. You were doing more coordinating?
Yeah, that's what the air attack does.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they start everybody off in air attack, and I left before I got in the tankers. So but I loved it. It was great. It was really you fly above everything and you watch everything and you coordinate it, and you help the ATGS, they're called, in the back seat, which is an air tactical group supervisor, and they're an experienced firefighter that has specialized training to coordinate fire response from the air.
So talking about general aviation, you have so much aviation experience. Acrobatics, firefighting, everything in between. What, in your opinion, what's the biggest safety concern for general aviation?
I really think people need to get advanced training as soon as possible, as soon as they get their license.
And when you say advanced training, what do you mean?
And it's not even advanced training. I'm talking about deep stalls, spins, recovering from upsets.
Because these things aren't taught in the private pilot?
You can only teach so much in 40 or 60 hours or 100 hours or whatever people get their license in. You can only teach so much, and so much of it is focused on using radios and airspace and things like that. So I'm not saying the flying comes secondary, but there's a lot of other stuff that's crammed into those short hours. And you don't always have an instructor or an airplane that's capable of doing extended envelope stuff, let's say. So as soon as you can, get training, do some deep stalls, do some spins, get over the fear of all that, and learn what we do as human beings when we get into a bind. We want to pull back, we want to hold on, and that's pretty normal, and that's where we get in trouble. Learn to turn. There's a great program, I guess, initiative by Rich Stoll, and it's called Learn to Turn, and he's putting out brochures and sending them to flight schools, and really about staying coordinated, not skidding the turn around. It's pretty simple stuff.
Using rudder pedals.
Using your rudders. I'm here at Oshkosh. I'm watching people land. One of my favorite things to do here is sit in the car and watch people land. Listen to the radio, and for hours, and regrade them, and But you learn a lot by doing that. And I always tell my students, go out and watch airplanes land. You're going to learn a lot from that. But I'm watching some of the nose dragger pilots, nose wheel pilots. They get off the runway onto the grass, and they're not pulling the stick back to lighten the load on the nose wheel, and the nose wheel's digging in because they're not taught that as nose wheel pilots. Just things like that can make you a much more aware aviator, safer and more confident pilot. And you'll get more enjoyment out of your flying when you're confident too. To me, that's the big thing. I see a lot of planes sitting around in hangars. I want to see people out flying. And I think if they feel more confident, they're going to fly more.
Patty, looking at your list of accomplishments and awards, it's really lengthy.
Thank you.
What award or honor is your favorite that stands out to you the most?
I've been given some really incredible honors. One is the National Air and Space Museum Award for Current Achievement, and that's amazing to me. And some of that's kind of surreal that your name's on that trophy. Being inducted into the National Aviation Hall of Fame is a big one, but I think I'm most proud of winning the U.S. Nationals and being the first woman to do it, because people said a woman couldn't do it when I got into it, and now there have been a number of women champions, and it's not a big deal, It's a big deal to win, but it's like, oh yeah, Vicky was national champion, or Debbie, or whatever. So to me, that was the most important one.
Well, Patty, thanks for taking time out of the day to talk with us.
Thank you.
You bet. And thank you guys, and we'll see you next time. Taking off.